Hello, Free Jord. I really appreciate you watching and commenting. Now, let's listen to the story.
My name is Elena Whitmore. I'm 29 years old, and I didn't know my entire life could tilt off its axis because my boyfriend laughed at the wrong moment and everyone else joined in. It wasn't loud at first. It never is. It was subtle, casual, the kind of laugh that slides under the table and wraps itself around your ankle before you realize you're being pulled under. Mark Caldwell and I had been together for 3 years. 3 years is long enough to build routines that feel permanent. Grocery lists written in shorthand, inside jokes that don't need explaining. The assumption that the person beside you is on your side. We lived together. Talked about marriage eventually. Had decent jobs, a comfortable apartment, and a shared understanding that we were stable. On paper, we were solid. In reality, there was a crack I kept pretending was a scratch. Mark had a habit. A small one, at least that's how he framed it. He liked to tease me in front of his friends. Not private teasing, not affectionate ribbing. Public commentary. My clothes. The way I got excited about things. How seriously I took work. How openly I talked about feelings. Every time it came wrapped in a smile. Delivered like a joke. And every time his friends laughed. A beat too fast. A little too eagerly. Like they'd learned their cue. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself couples tease each other. I told myself love means compromise. The night everything broke happened at his friend Melissa's birthday dinner. 8 of us. Trendy Italian place downtown. Dim lighting, exposed brick, menus with no prices. The kind of place that pretends intimacy is part of the meal. I'd had a brutal week at work. Long hours. A project unraveling faster than I could fix it. I was exhausted and honestly wanted to stay home. Mark insisted I come. You'll feel better once you're out, he said. Halfway through dinner, conversation drifted to Valentine's Day plans. Cabins, weekend trips, grand gestures. Someone asked Mark what we were doing. He smiled. Elena made reservations at that French place she loves, he said. And she wrote me this letter, like a full-on handwritten letter about her feelings. For a second, I thought he was being sweet. I was wrong. A letter? Someone laughed. What is this, a period drama? Mark grinned wider. It was a lot. Very her. The table laughed. My chest tightened. I thought you liked that, I said quietly. You said you did. I like normal romantic gestures, he replied easily. Not diary-level stuff. It's a bit much. A bit much. The words landed heavier than he expected. I repeated them softly. A bit much? Mark leaned back, amused. Relax. You're too sensitive. Honestly, not exactly a real woman when you take everything so personally. The laughter exploded. That was the moment. I felt something inside me go very still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I smiled, just slightly. Maybe, I said calmly, but a real woman doesn't stay where she's mocked. The table went silent. Mark's smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? He asked. It means I'm done being your entertainment. I stood, placed cash on the table, enough to cover my share and the tip. Enjoy dinner. I walked out. Mark didn't follow me right away. That told me everything. I didn't go home that night. Not because I wanted to be dramatic. Not because I wanted him to chase me. I didn't go home because I knew if I did, I'd fold. I'd apologize for making things awkward. I'd explain my feelings again, softer this time. I'd convince myself that love meant enduring discomfort quietly. Instead, I went somewhere neutral, a place without shared memories or inside jokes stitched into the furniture. By the time I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, my hands were shaking. Mark called me 6 times. I didn't answer. When I finally checked my phone again, it was almost 2 a.m. That's when I saw the text from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, Elena, it's Rachel, Mark's ex. I know this is weird, but can we talk? My stomach dropped. Rachel. I knew who she was, of course. She wasn't a mystery. Just a name that came up occasionally, usually followed by Mark rolling his eyes and calling her too emotional or a lot. I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. About what? The typing bubble appeared immediately. About Mark, and about tonight. There are things you deserve to know. I hesitated. Then I called. She answered on the first ring. Thank you for calling, she said quickly, like she'd been holding her breath. I'm really sorry if this is intrusive. I saw what happened at dinner. You were there? I asked. No, Melissa told me. Mark texted me afterward, laughing about it. The word laughing settled into my chest like ice. He said you stormed out because you couldn't take a joke, Rachel continued. That you proved his point. I sat down slowly. I figured as much, I said. There was a pause. Look, she said carefully, I'm not calling to get back with him. I don't want anything from you. I I wish someone had warned me, and I don't want to stay quiet anymore. I closed my eyes. Warned you about what? Rachel exhaled. He does this, she said. He dates women who are emotionally open, kind, thoughtful. Then he mocks them for it, usually in front of people. It makes him feel bigger. My throat tightened. That's exactly what he said about you, I admitted, that you were too much. She gave a humorless laugh. Yeah, that's his favorite phrase. She told me everything. How he'd slowly reframed her feelings as flaws. How apologies only came when she threatened to leave. How he'd belittled her in front of friends, then told her she was overreacting afterward. I kept thinking if I could just be less sensitive, he'd stop, she said. But that was the trap. He needed me to feel small. After I left dinner, Rachel told me Mark had shrugged it off. He said you'd come back in a few days, that you always did. The silence stretched between us. I didn't, I said quietly. I came back once, but I don't think I will again. I hope you don't, she said gently, because it doesn't get better. He just gets smarter about it. When we hung up, it was nearly 3 a.m. I didn't sleep. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. Apologies, accusations, promises to change. Mark oscillated between remorse and irritation so fast it made my head spin. I didn't respond. On day 5, I went back to the apartment while he was at work. I packed everything that was mine. Clothes, books, photos that only existed because I'd taken them. The lease was in his name. He'd insisted it was easier that way. At the time, I thought he was being practical. Now I realized it had always been an exit he controlled. I left my key on the counter. And a note. Mark, I've moved out completely. I'll send you money for utilities for the days I was still there. Take care. Nothing else. No hope. No maybe. No invitation. That night, Rachel texted again. I'm proud of you. For the first time in days, I believed it. The first week after I left, Mark tried remorse like a costume. He wore it in carefully timed messages, in voice notes that sounded rehearsed, in long paragraphs that hit every right word without ever actually feeling true. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it hurt you that deeply. I've been thinking. I want to do better. It almost worked. Because part of me wanted it to work. Part of me wanted the story to end in a neat little bow. He understands. I forgive. We grow. But then the second costume came out. The moment he realized I wasn't answering, his apology started to rot. So you're really doing this? Over one joke? You're going to throw away 3 years because you can't take teasing? And there it was. Not remorse, not love, just rage that he no longer controlled the narrative. His friends started texting too. Some defended him, softening his cruelty into banter. He didn't mean it like that. You know how he is. Everyone was just joking. A few apologized awkwardly, like they were embarrassed, but not enough to fully confront what they'd been part of. Melissa sent, I'm sorry about the dinner. I should have said something. Nicole sent a long message about how she'd reflected and realized she'd been enabling Mark's behavior. I read them all. I didn't answer, because I was learning something new about myself. I didn't owe closure to people who only showed conscience after consequences. A week later, Mark escalated. He didn't show up at my place. He didn't even know the exact apartment number, and I'd made sure the building manager wouldn't hand it out. So he went where I couldn't ignore him easily. My job. Security called my extension mid-morning. Elena? There's someone downstairs asking for you. Says it's urgent. I already knew. When I got to the lobby, Mark was standing there like a man who hadn't slept. His hair was messy, his eyes rimmed red. Not heartbreak, not exactly. More like panic. Like someone who had dropped something valuable and was furious, it didn't fall back into his hand. We need to talk, he said immediately. I didn't step closer. No, we don't. His jaw tensed. Elena, please, I made a mistake. I blinked slowly. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is mixing up dates. He flinched. What you did was a pattern. I'm in therapy, he rushed out. I started this week. My therapist says... I don't care what your therapist says, I cut in, softer than he expected. You spent 3 years training me to feel embarrassed for being loving. 1 week of therapy doesn't erase that. Mark's eyes flashed. So this is it? You're just done? Over one dinner? I almost laughed. Almost. But it wasn't funny. It wasn't one dinner, I said quietly. It was 3 years of you making me feel like caring was a weakness. A beat. His voice lowered, dangerous in its calm. Is this because of Rachel? I didn't react, but inside something sharpened. She told me the truth, I said. Mark's face went pale. What did she say? That you do this on purpose, I replied. That after I left, you laughed about it. That you told people I'd come crawling back. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. For once, he didn't have a joke. Please don't come here again, I said. This is my workplace. He tried to reach for my arm. I stepped back. And that small movement, tiny, almost nothing, looked like it punched him in the chest. Because it wasn't just rejection. It was boundaries. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, he texted again. You forgot some stuff. Books, a jacket, a few kitchen things. I can drop it off. I stared at the message for a long time. It was the oldest trick in the book. Logistics disguised as intimacy. I did want my books. So I replied with one sentence. Leave it with the building manager. Don't come up. He agreed instantly. Too instantly. When I picked up the box the next day, the manager, an older man with kind eyes, handed it to me and lowered his voice. She tried to get your apartment number, he said. I refused, just so you know. My stomach tightened. Thank you, I said, and meant it. She looked angry, he added gently, not sad. I nodded. That was the moment I understood something terrifying and freeing. Mark wasn't heartbroken. He was losing control. A few days later, I booked my own therapy session. Not because I thought I was broken, because I wanted to know why I stayed. My therapist, Dr. Nguyen, listened quietly as I described everything. The teasing, the laughter, the way I'd learned to swallow hurt until it became normal. When I finished, she said one sentence that landed like a door closing. You were in a relationship with someone who needed you to be small, so he could feel big. I stared at her. That's not love, she added, voice steady. That's exploitation. Something inside me cracked, but not in the painful way. In the way that finally lets light in. A month after I left, I was out with a few coworkers at a bar. Not the kind of place Mark and I used to go, but somewhere new, somewhere unclaimed. I was mid-conversation when the door opened and laughter spilled in. And then I saw him. Mark walked in with a woman on his arm. Tall, glossy hair, confident smile. The kind of woman who looked like she'd never been told she was too much in her life. Our eyes locked across the room. His expression flickered. Shock, anger, calculation. He tightened his hand on her arm possessively, like he was staging a scene for me. I didn't flinch. I turned back to my coworkers. Kept talking. Kept smiling. 10 minutes later, he was standing at our table. Elena, he said, voice sharp. Can we talk outside? I didn't even look up fully. I'm good, I said. Thanks. Just 5 minutes. I met his eyes then, calm, unblinking. Mark, I have nothing to say to you. His gaze darted to the woman sitting beside me, my coworker, Hannah, who was laughing at something someone said. You moved on already? He snapped. Hannah's smile vanished. Excuse me? She's my coworker, I said flatly. And it's none of your business. Mark's face hardened. You're really going to hold one bad night against me forever? I leaned back slightly. It wasn't one bad night, I said, voice low enough that only he could hear. It was 3 years. You just didn't notice because I kept forgiving you. He stood there, waiting for me to soften, to apologize, to rescue him from the discomfort of being seen clearly. I didn't. Finally, he turned and walked away. The woman with him looked confused, then annoyed. They argued near the bar, and then they left. One of my coworkers raised his glass toward me. Clean break, he said. I swallowed, my throat tight. It's not clean yet, I admitted, but it's mine. 3 months passed. Not the dramatic kind of passing. No big revelations, no cinematic closure. Just days stacking quietly on top of each other, like bricks forming something sturdier than what I'd lived in before. I settled into my new apartment. 1 bedroom, good light, neutral walls that didn't echo with old arguments or laughter that had once felt warm and later felt sharp. I furnished it slowly, intentionally. Every object I brought in had to answer a simple question. Do I want this here, or am I used to accommodating someone else's taste? It was surprising how often I'd never asked myself that before. I kept going to therapy. Week by week, patterns surfaced, not just with Mark, but in other relationships where I'd learned to smooth things over, to minimize discomfort, to make myself smaller so harmony could exist. Dr. Nguyen said something one afternoon that stayed with me. People who benefit from your silence will always call your boundaries selfish. That explained a lot. Mark stopped texting about 6 weeks in. No dramatic goodbye, no final apology. Just silence. Rachel told me later that he'd started dating someone new, the woman from the bar. She's already noticing the pattern, Rachel said over coffee. He's making jokes about her emotions now, framing it like honesty. I felt a twinge of something. Not jealousy, not satisfaction, just relief. That's her lesson to learn, I said quietly. Not mine. Rachel nodded. That's the hardest part, you know, walking away without trying to save the next person. I smiled sadly. I spent 3 years trying to save him. I'm done volunteering. I went on a few casual dates. Nothing serious, nothing heavy. I wasn't looking to replace Mark. I was learning how to exist without translating myself into someone more palatable. One afternoon, a coworker, Evan, asked if I wanted to get coffee after work. Not a dramatic invitation, not a performance. Just, you seem like someone I enjoy talking to. Want to continue? We sat at a cafe with uneven tables and too loud music. At one point, I mentioned I'd had a rough day. He didn't joke, didn't deflect, didn't tease me for being too intense. He just said, "Do you want to talk about it?" It was such a small thing, and yet it felt revolutionary. Derek, my friend who'd helped me move out, asked me something one night over takeout. "Do you ever regret leaving the way you did? Just standing up and walking out?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I said. "I'd given him enough warnings." Derek nodded. "Yeah, people don't hear words when they're comfortable." "Exactly," I said. "Sometimes the only way to be taken seriously is to leave." Here's what I've learned in these 3 months. Being emotional isn't weakness, it's information. The right person won't make you feel embarrassed for caring. They won't turn your softness into a spectacle. And love, real love, doesn't require you to shrink. I don't hate Mark. I genuinely hope he figures out why he needs to belittle people to feel secure. But that work? That's not mine anymore. My job is to protect what I rebuilt. To listen when something hurts instead of explaining it away. To walk away the first time I'm told I'm too much. I'm not too sensitive. I'm exactly sensitive enough. And the right person, if and when they show up, will understand that without laughing.